How are we doing, guys? So today's session we are going to be breaking down another sample from my pack Levels, and this is called Wings of Love. It's a 70s soul sample, perfect for artists like Griselda, Drake, J. Cole, those kind of artists. So I started this at 170 BPM, or you could see this at 85 BPM. So basically like either double time or half time. I just like to do recording in 170, like double time. I just find my programming is a bit easier there. I like the click running a bit quicker. But anyway, so let's jump straight in. So I started this with some piano chords, which I'll play out. I'm going to put the chords, right, so I'm going to put the chords up on screen for you. And you can see it's in D minor or F major. And literally like just walking down from the A sharp major 7th down to the A. And then I do this interesting movement with dominant chords that kind of is a little bit jazzy, a little bit interesting R&B, but it's very typical of what you would have heard back in the 70s, you know, artists like Peabo Bryson, Al Green, Earth, Wind and Fire, not so much Earth, Wind and Fire, but those kind of artists there, the Silvers, all great artists. I'm going to stick some of their stuff up on screen now as well. So the bit I'm talking about, that part there, that movement is quite typical of the time, and I like to make little parts that can just be used on their own as little chops. Now, the interesting part for me is from bar 9, where I start basically like change the rhythm up of the piano, and we kind of go da 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 da, and that's on just the G major chord, and I'm building towards what is, if you know music theory, it's the 5 chord of the scale, which is basically like a C in the bass, but I'm playing a B flat chord, B flat major chord with a C in the bass, and that is basically it's a tension chord. And what it does is you're going to hear this in loads of like old Kanye stuff, like it's a great chord to use. So you want to study the 5 chord. I'm going to do a video just on that chord itself, because for these 70s soul samples, I feel it's really like impactful because it leads on to something else. It's hard to explain exactly the power of that chord, but if you hear it, this one, and then a little walk down, ga 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 ga. I just wrote that in my head, sung it. I said on my last video that a lot of the lines I sing in my head first, and then I program them on the draw them in the MIDI in. And I basically just did this here. I think I wrote these chords on the guitar. I'm more of a guitarist than a keyboard player, but then I just drew them in on the piano roll by starting with bass notes and then just making simple major triads and minor triads, dominant triads, and then just literally little extensions on the top, moving some notes around till I thought it sounded good. And, you know, I was happy with where it ended. This here is just the same chord here, but an inversion, literally like just to make it feel more like a piano player, I did that. And as you can see, I've also like another trick I like to do. I've just strummed the notes out, and literally all I do is just like pull them around till I think they sound good. So processing on the piano, I use the Sky keys for the piano sound itself. Then I think I had a Portal on, which I muted. RC20, you know, you're going to see these plugins on all of my tracks. Valhalla Vintage, there we go, a little bit, mix is quite low there. And then an EQ, I wanted to make it really honky sound. Like these old pianos tended not to be very lush. They tended to be quite a kind of honky, toppy MIDI sound. So I really wanted that to come through on the piano, and I think I got that nicely. So the next sound that I put in was actually the bass sound. And if we look at the MIDI information here, what you can see that a lot of the time I was putting some little fills in here, nothing too drastic, walking up to notes, which is a really good easy fill you can do that makes the bass sound more like a real player. You can see I've done it a couple of times here, and I've walked down to the note here. All I'm doing is just literally like a little doo-doo-doo. And again, I'd sing all these lines in before I play them in, and then I'd just draw them in on the MIDI roll. So at the end, I've got a little fill just going, and then here I'm just space. Bit of space there, lovely. I love space. Space in samples is really important. Just let the sample breathe a little bit. So we'll move on to the next sound. Again, just a little bit of EQ on that bass, not much at all doing on that, no compression, nothing like that. So then onto the glockenspiel on these. Now all the other sounds really are just there to kind of dress the main sounds, which is that piano. So I've got the glockenspiel, I solo it off. I think I was just accenting. I might have even just copied the MIDI straight over. And again, very common instrument back in the 70s. Remember, back then it was all real instruments, although like synth started to creep in towards the kind of the late 70s. Oh yeah, the glockenspiel here. Again, same MIDI, nothing too exciting. Processing, pretty much the same. You've got the Vinyl 3 preset on the RC20. Valhalla Vintage, pretty much the same settings there. EQ. And on these old records, I kind of limit myself to probably like between 8 to 16 sounds, just because back then the tape recorders they were using would have really only had 8 or 16 tracks that you could really record stuff onto. Obviously, you could sort of sum stuff into groups, but I kind of limit it, and it sounds a bit more authentic that way as well. Now I put in some pizzicato strings, which again, just the Logic stock string sounds. And it's just a counter melody that I thought sounded cool with the piano. You can hear that there. Just some pit strings there, nothing too exciting. Processing, got this old spring reverb on them. Bit of RC20 as always, and then an EQ just cutting some lows, pretty standard. The choir that you'll know from my samples I use all the time. Just thought that added some nice extra warmth to the sound. It looks like I've copied the MIDI again straight over. I might have changed a few voicings on the piano, from the piano to the choir. Normally I do that. Now the vocals, the lead vocals you can hear straight out of arcade with some EQ on them and a bit of reels to give it a little bit of vintage flavour. Some Valhalla again, that EQ. And nothing too fancy. I doubled them and pitched them up an octave to give some texture, and added a phaser on there, just a Logic standard phaser. So now we're moving to the flutes. Mellotron sound, stock Logic Mellotron I believe, actually I think this is the Arturia Mellotron on the Strawberry Flutes preset, which is basically modelled after the Beatles. The Beatles are the famous utilisers of the Mellotron, and the Mellotron's a really cool old synth. Is it a synth? Old sort of piano-y synthy thing. The sampler, I guess you call it, in the early days of sampling. And you can get remakes of the Mellotron as well, which I know a lot of guys have now that are also really, really good. But I just used the plugin, and it sounds good to me. So after that, added some drums, and the drums literally like from Addictive Drums, and I believe if I'll show you the drums that I'm using. I'm on the kit, which is basically one of the vintage dry sounds. I love that for 70s sort of drum sounds. And I think I just programmed this groove in. Pretty straightforward hip-hoppy R&B groove. That classic kind of boom bap drum groove. And then I did another channel with some drum fills, and I was just literally accenting the builds where I'm building dun 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 dun. I just basically copied the timing information there. Couple of tom fills here. Falling down the stairs sounds like. Added a tambourine, just a loop, and a triangle on top. Some tape hiss, and that's pretty much everything in the sample, all playing together. I really love this sample, and I think the magic really came from the SOUNDSHIFTER, which again just gives it that